The Great Hall of the Galactic Council was the largest building ever made by any species in the known universe. It floated in empty space, far from any star or planet, a neutral place where all the races of the galaxy could meet and talk. Today, over 3,000 ambassadors from different worlds sat in their seats, waiting for the High Arbiter to speak. High Arbiter Vexenal walked slowly to the center platform. He was old, even by the standards of his long-lived species. His 4 eyes had seen empires rise and fall. His gray skin was covered with the marks of age and wisdom. When he spoke, everyone listened. "My friends," Vexenal began, his voice carried by technology to every corner of the massive hall. "I have called this emergency meeting to discuss a matter of great importance. Today, I am issuing Directive 774. This directive will be sent to every planet, every station, and every ship in the Confederacy." The ambassadors murmured among themselves. Emergency directives were rare. The last one had been issued over 200 years ago, during the Great Plague of Sector 9. Vexenal raised one of his 4 hands for silence. "The directive is simple. No member species of this council shall involve the humans of Earth in any military conflict, territorial dispute, or act of aggression. You shall not attack them. You shall not trick them into wars. You shall not use them as soldiers or weapons. Leave them alone." Laughter came from the section where the Varathi Empire sat. Their ambassador, a large creature named Crixtel, stood up. His species was known for their strength and their pride. They had conquered 60 star systems and had never lost a war. "High Arbiter," Crixtel said with amusement in his voice, "surely you are joking. The humans are nothing. They are babies in the galactic community. They only discovered faster-than-light travel 30 years ago. They have maybe 40 ships in their entire fleet. My empire has 40,000. Why should we fear them?" Many ambassadors nodded in agreement. The humans were indeed new to space. Their planet Earth was a small blue world on the edge of the galaxy. Most species had barely heard of them. Vexenal did not smile. His old eyes looked at Crixtel with something that might have been pity. "Ambassador, please sit down. I am about to show you why we should all be very, very careful around the humans." He pressed a button, and a holographic display appeared in the center of the hall. It showed a beautiful planet covered in blue oceans and green land. "This is Earth," Vexenal said. "The human homeworld. Let me tell you about this planet. It has over 500 active volcanoes. It experiences thousands of earthquakes every year. Its weather includes hurricanes, tornadoes, floods, and droughts. The planet regularly gets hit by rocks from space. Its temperature swings from extreme heat to extreme cold." The ambassadors looked confused. Why was this important? "The planet is also filled with predators," Vexenal continued. "Creatures with sharp teeth and claws that hunt and kill. There are tiny invisible organisms that cause terrible diseases. There are plants that produce poison. There are insects that drink blood and spread sickness. Almost everything on Earth can kill you." Now the ambassadors were beginning to understand. Their own homeworlds were gentle places. Soft climates, few predators, stable environments. That was normal for intelligent life. Evolution needed peace and safety to produce thinking beings. "The humans call their planet Earth," Vexenal said. "Our scientists call it something else. We call it a Category 12 death world." Gasps filled the hall. Category 12 was the highest danger rating possible. Most death worlds were uninhabited. Nothing could survive on them. "The humans did not just survive on this death world," Vexenal said. "They conquered it. They became the top predator on a planet full of predators. They did this not with claws or fangs, but with their minds. They learned to make tools. They learned to work together. They learned to fight." He changed the display to show human history. Images of ancient battles, medieval wars, and modern conflicts flashed across the screen. In their short history, the humans have never stopped fighting. They fight each other constantly. They have developed thousands of different ways to kill. They have weapons that can destroy entire cities. They have weapons that can poison the air and water. They have weapons that can split atoms apart and release the energy of stars. Crixtel was no longer laughing. His face had grown pale. But here is the most important thing, Vexnol said. Most species fight to win. When they win, they stop. Humans are different. Humans fight until the enemy cannot fight anymore. They do not accept surrender easily. They do not forgive easily. When humans go to war, they go to war completely. It pulled up a new file. It was marked with red symbols that meant it was highly classified. 20 years ago, a species called the Drath Collective made a terrible mistake. They did not know about humans. They saw Earth as an easy target, a resource-rich world defended by primitives. They sent an invasion fleet. The display showed 40 Drath warships entering the human solar system. The Drath were strong. They had good technology. They had conquered many worlds before. They expected the humans to surrender immediately. Vexnol paused and looked around the hall. The Drath Collective no longer exists. Silence filled the chamber. Complete, absolute silence. In less than 1 year, the humans destroyed the Drath completely. Not just their military, their entire civilization. Hundreds of years of Drath culture, gone. Billions of Drath lives ended. All because they made the mistake of threatening human children. Vexnol turned off the display. I was young when this happened. I was part of the observation team that watched the war. What I saw changed me forever. The humans did not fight like any species I had ever seen. They did not follow rules. They did not care about honor or tradition. They only cared about winning, about protecting their own, about making sure the threat could never return. He looked directly at Ambassador Crixtel. So when you ask me why we should fear a species with only 40 ships, I tell you this. Those 40 ships are crewed by beings who have been perfecting the art of war since before your species learned to walk upright. Those humans carry inside them the survival instincts of a death world. They are friendly now. They are peaceful now. But if you threaten them, if you harm their families, if you give them a reason to fight, they will not stop until you are gone. Vexnol walked back toward his seat. Directive 774 is not a suggestion. It is a warning. Do not involve the humans in your conflicts. Because if you do, you may not survive the consequences. The hall remained silent for a very long time. 20 years before the council meeting, the galaxy was a different place. Humans had only just discovered how to travel faster than light. They had a few small colonies on Mars and the moons of Jupiter. They were excited about exploring the stars, eager to meet other intelligent life. Hopeful about the future, the Drath Collective saw them as easy prey. Commander Zethrol stood on the bridge of his flagship, the crushing tide, and looked at the blue planet on his view screen. Earth. Such a small world. Such a weak species. His masters had sent him to claim this system for the collective, and he intended to do so quickly. Scan the planet, Zethrol ordered. His voice was cold and hard. He had conquered 11 worlds before this one. Each conquest had made him richer and more powerful. His science officer, a young Drath named Pexva, studied the data coming in. Commander, the planet has significant resources. Metals, water, organic compounds. The population is approximately 8 billion intelligent beings. 8 billion slaves, Zethrol corrected him. Or 8 billion corpses. It depends on how cooperative they are. The Drath fleet moved deeper into the solar system. 40 warships, each one bristling with weapons. The humans detected them almost immediately. But what could they do? Their ships were tiny. Their weapons were primitive. This would be over in hours. On Mars, at a small research station, a young man named Danny Cooper was the first human to make official contact with aliens. He was 26 years old, tall and thin, with brown hair and friendly eyes. He had grown up on a farm in Kansas before joining the Space Corps. He had always dreamed of meeting beings from other worlds. He had never imagined it would happen like this. "Katie," Danny called to his partner. "Come look at this." Specialist Katie Morgan walked over to his station. She was 24, short and strong, with red hair tied back in a practical ponytail. She had joined the Corps to escape a boring life on Earth, to find adventure among the stars. She stared at the sensor readings. "That's impossible. Those ships are huge. 40 of them," Danny said quietly. "And they're heading straight for Earth." The alien broadcast came 30 minutes later. It was transmitted on all frequencies, in all human languages simultaneously. The aliens had clearly been studying humanity for some time. "People of Earth," the message said, "we are the Drath Collective. Your planet and your solar system now belong to us. You will surrender immediately. All humans will be relocated to work camps. Your planet will be harvested for resources. Resistance is not recommended. You have 1 hour to respond." Danny and Katie looked at each other. Neither of them knew what to say. On Earth, the message caused panic. People ran through the streets. Governments held emergency meetings. Military forces went to high alert. Though everyone knew, their weapons could do nothing against ships that size. But not everyone was afraid. Admiral Marcus Cole sat in the command center of United Earth Defense Force headquarters in Geneva. He was 62 years old, with gray hair and a face full of scars from wars fought long ago. He had served in 3 major conflicts on Earth before humanity reached space. He had seen death. He had caused death. He understood war better than almost anyone alive. "Sir," his aide said nervously, "the aliens are demanding a response. What should we tell them?" Marcus looked at the images of the alien fleet. 40 ships, each one capable of destroying a city. By any logical measure, humanity had no chance. But Marcus Cole had never been logical. "Open a channel," he said calmly. "I'll respond myself." His aide hesitated. "Sir, shouldn't we consult with the world leaders first? Discuss our options? Maybe we should consider..." "Consider what?" Marcus interrupted. "Surrender? Let them take our planet? Let them enslave our children?" He shook his head. "No, open the channel." The channel opened. Marcus looked directly into the camera, knowing his face would be seen by the alien commander. "This is Admiral Marcus Cole of the United Earth Defense Force. I have received your demands. Here is my response." He paused, and when he spoke again, his voice was hard as steel. "Leave our system. Leave now and never come back. You have 24 hours to comply. If you are still here after that time, we will destroy you. There will be no negotiation. There will be no second warning. Go home or die here. The choice is yours." He cut the channel. His aide stared at him in shock. "Sir, we can't fight them. They'll kill us all." Marcus stood up and walked to the window. Outside, he could see the city of Geneva, full of people going about their lives, unaware that their entire species had just been threatened with extinction. "Maybe they will kill us," Marcus said quietly. "But they won't take us alive. They won't take our planet without a fight. And they will learn something important today." "What's that, sir?" Marcus turned back to face his aide. "They will learn that humans don't surrender. We never have. We never will. Our ancestors fought against impossible odds and survived. They fought with sticks and stones against predators with claws and fangs. They fought against disease and disaster and death itself. And they won. They always won. Because giving up is not in our nature. He pointed at the screen showing the alien fleet. Those creatures out there have never met anything like us. They've conquered weak species, peaceful species, species that surrendered when they saw a superior force. But we're not like that. We're the children of a death world. We're the descendants of survivors. And we're going to show them what that means. On the crushing tide, Commander Zethral watched the human response with disbelief. Then he started laughing. His officers joined him. The whole bridge filled with the sound of Drath laughter. "The primitive thinks he can threaten us," Zethral said, wiping tears from his eyes. "How amusing. How delightfully stupid. Should we attack now, Commander?" His weapons officer asked. Zethral shook his head. "No. Let them have their 24 hours. Let them panic and cry and realize how hopeless their situation is. When the time runs out, we will crush them. We will make an example of them. Every species in the galaxy will hear how the Drath dealt with those who dared to resist us." He settled back in his chair, completely confident in his coming victory. He did not notice his science officer, Paxva, looking worried as he studied more data about Earth, about its history, about its wars, about the terrible things humans had done to each other over the centuries. Paxva said nothing. He was young and knew his place. But deep in his heart, he felt something he had never felt before, fear that the humans had not surrendered. They had not begged. They had looked at 40 warships and said, "Go home or die." What kind of species did that? Paxva was afraid he was about to find out. The 24 hours passed quickly. On Earth, people did not spend that time crying or panicking. They spent it preparing. Admiral Marcus Cole activated something called Protocol Omega. It was a plan that had existed only on paper, created years ago by military thinkers who wondered what humanity would do if faced with an unstoppable enemy. The plan was simple. If we cannot win with what we have, we will build what we need. If we cannot build what we need, we will use everything else as a weapon. Across the solar system, humans went to work. Mining ships that collected rocks from asteroids were loaded with explosives. Cargo freighters that carried supplies between colonies were armed with whatever weapons could be found. Research stations that studied distant stars became missile platforms. Even civilian transport ships were converted into weapons of war. Nathan Ellis was 53 years old. He was not a soldier. He was a cargo hauler, a simple man who flew goods between Earth and Mars to earn money for his family. He had gray hair, rough hands, and a bad knee from an old injury. He should have been nowhere near a battle, but when the call went out for volunteers, Nathan was one of the first to respond. "I have grandchildren on Earth," he told the recruitment officer. "2 of them. Billy is 6 and Emma is 4. They like to play in my backyard when I'm home. They chase my dog around and laugh." The officer nodded but said nothing. "Those aliens want to take my grandchildren away," Nathan continued. "They want to put them in work camps. They want to turn them into slaves." His voice grew hard. "I'm not going to let that happen. Tell me what you need me to do." They gave Nathan an old cargo ship loaded with nuclear bombs. They told him his mission was to get as close to the alien flagship as possible and detonate the payload. They told him it was a one-way trip. Nathan smiled and said, "Sounds fair to me." Similar scenes played out everywhere. Ordinary people, farmers and teachers and factory workers stepped forward to fight. They had no training. They had no military experience. But they had something the Drath could never understand. They had something worth dying for. While the civilians prepared their suicide runs, the military worked on a different plan. The Drath shields were strong, but they were not perfect. Human scientists studied the energy signatures of the alien ships and found a weakness. The shields flickered slightly when hit with a specific frequency of electromagnetic radiation. "If we can match that frequency with our weapons," explained Dr. Lily Tran, the lead scientist on the project, "we can punch through their defenses." She was 34 years old, small and quiet, the kind of person who preferred books to people. She had spent her whole life studying physics, never imagining her work would be used for war. Now she worked without sleep, without rest, pushing her mind to its limits. "How long will it take to modify our weapons?" Admiral Cole asked. "Normally? Years, but I think we can do it in hours if we cut some corners." "Cut them all. We don't have time for safety checks." The Drath expected humans to surrender when the deadline passed. Instead, they got a war. The first wave came from the civilian volunteers. 53 ships, most of them barely able to fly, charged directly at the alien fleet. The Drath laughed and opened fire. Ship after ship exploded in bright flashes of light, but some got through. Nathan Ellis pushed his old cargo ship as fast as it could go. Alien weapons fire streaked past him, blowing apart the ships around him. He saw his friends die, saw their vessels torn apart by energy beams. But he kept going. "This is for Billy and Emma," he whispered as the flagship grew larger in his view screen. "This is for every kid on Earth who deserves to grow up free." His ship hit the Drath flagship at full speed. The nuclear payload detonated on impact. The explosion did not destroy the flagship, but it damaged it badly. The shields failed. The engines went offline. Commander Zethral was thrown from his chair as the bridge shook around him. "What happened?" He screamed. "What hit us?" "A cargo ship, Commander," Pexva answered, his voice shaking. "A civilian cargo ship loaded with primitive nuclear weapons." Zethral could not understand. "Civilians? They're sending civilians against us? Why would they sacrifice their own people like this?" He did not understand because he could not understand. The Drath did not love anything enough to die for it. They conquered because they wanted wealth and power, not because they wanted to protect something precious. The idea of a grandfather flying a bomb into an enemy ship to save his grandchildren was beyond their ability to imagine. 12 Drath ships were destroyed in the first wave. 12 ships, lost to miners and haulers and people who had never held a weapon before. And then the real attack began. The human military ships came next, armed with the modified weapons Dr. Tran had created. Sergeant Megan Torres led a boarding party on the crippled flagship. She was 28 years old, strong and fierce, with short black hair and eyes that showed no fear. "We're going in through the breach in the hull," she told her team of 12 Marines. "Stay close, move fast, shoot anything that isn't human." The Drath had never experienced close combat before. Their wars were fought with ships, at a distance, with surrender accepted when one side was clearly losing. The idea of enemy soldiers boarding your ship and fighting room by room was foreign to them. Megan and her team taught them about it. The Marines moved through the flagship like ghosts, shooting with perfect accuracy, fighting with a skill that came from thousands of years of human warfare. The Drath soldiers tried to fight back, but they were slow and confused. They had been trained to push buttons on consoles, not to face enemies with guns and knives. In one corridor, a Drath soldier shot Megan in the arm. The wound was serious. Blood poured down her sleeve. Any Drath would have fallen back, called for medical help, waited for treatment. Megan switched her gun to her other hand and kept fighting. The Drath soldiers stared at her in disbelief. "You're hurt. Why don't you stop?" Megan answered by putting a bullet between his eyes. "Because stopping means dying," she said to his body as she walked past. "And I'm not done yet." Her team captured the bridge in 40 minutes. Commander Zathro was taken prisoner, forced to watch as human soldiers took control of his beautiful ship. "How?" he asked Megan as she zip-tied his arms behind his back. How did you do this? We had the superior force. We had the better technology. How did you beat us? Megan smiled, and it was not a friendly smile. You made a mistake, she said. You thought this was a war. For us, it's not a war. It's survival. And humans are very, very good at surviving. Outside, the Drath fleet was falling apart. Human ships swarmed them like angry insects, hitting weak points, exploiting the modified weapons that could now pierce their shields. More boarding parties landed on more ships. The Battle of Sol was just beginning, and humanity was winning. Commander Zethral sent a message before his ship was fully captured. It went out to Drath High Command, traveling faster than light across the galaxy. The message was simple. Send reinforcements. The primitives are fighting back. The Drath leaders were shocked. Zethral was their best commander. He had never asked for help before. They decided to send everything they could spare. 100 additional warships, the largest fleet in Drath history, jumped toward the human solar system. When the reinforcements arrived 3 days later, they expected to find the humans crushed and broken. They expected to see their fellow Drath celebrating victory. They expected an easy end to a minor problem. What they found was a nightmare. The original 40 Drath ships had been reduced to 17, and most of those were damaged or captured. Human ships swarmed everywhere, more than there had been before. New ships that the Drath had never seen, built from strange metals and powered by strange engines. The human scientists had not been sleeping during those 3 days. They had been studying captured Drath technology, taking it apart, learning how it worked, making it better. They had reverse-engineered the alien shields and applied them to human ships. They had improved the alien weapons and added them to human designs. They had combined human creativity with Drath technology to create something entirely new. How is this possible? Asked Fleet Commander Harval, the leader of the reinforcement fleet. They were primitives. They should not be able to understand our technology. The science officer shook his head in disbelief. They learn fast, sir. Faster than any species we've ever encountered. They took our technology and improved it in 3 days. 3 days. It would have taken us years to do the same. This was the thing about humans that the Drath had not known. Humans were not just survivors. They were adapters. They took ideas from everywhere and made them their own. They copied what worked and threw away what didn't. They learned from their enemies and used that knowledge to defeat them. It was how they had survived on their death world. It was how they had spread across their planet. And now it was how they would fight the Drath. Captain Kevin Drake was one of the humans leading the charge against the reinforcement fleet. He was 35 years old, tall and muscular, with cold blue eyes and a face that rarely showed emotion. He had been Special Forces before joining the Space Corps, trained to survive in impossible situations. Kevin had a plan. While the main human fleet engaged the Drath reinforcements directly, he would take a small team behind enemy lines. Their target, the flagship of Fleet Commander Harval. "Sir, this is suicide," said his pilot, Lieutenant Amy Scott. She was young, only 22, with bright eyes and a nervous smile. "There are 100 ships between us and that flagship." Kevin looked at her calmly. "Then we'll have to be creative." They used a captured Drath shuttle, one of the ships taken from the original fleet. The shuttle had been modified with human weapons and a human cloaking device that the Drath had never seen before. It was based on Drath shield technology, turned inside out to hide instead of protect. The shuttle slipped through the fleet undetected. The Drath were too focused on the main battle to notice one small ship moving in the wrong direction. Kevin and his team docked with the flagship and entered through an airlock. Inside, they moved like shadows. Kevin had studied the captured Drath prisoners, learned their weaknesses, understood their psychology. The Drath were not cowards. but they were not prepared for this kind of war. They expected ships to fight ships, not individuals to sneak onto their vessels and plant bombs. "Charges set in the reactor room," reported Sergeant Nick Palmer, Kevin's explosives expert. Nick was built like a tank, with huge arms and a face covered in scars. He had been a boxer before joining the military, and he still fought like one. "Good," Kevin replied. "Everyone back to the shuttle. We're leaving in 5 minutes." But the mission did not go smoothly. A draft guard spotted them in the corridor and raised the alarm. Suddenly, the hallways were filled with enemy soldiers, all rushing toward the human intruders. "Go!" Kevin shouted to his team. "Get to the shuttle. I'll hold them off." He turned to face the approaching draft, his weapon raised. There were at least 30 of them, maybe more. Too many for one person to fight. But Kevin was not trying to win. He was trying to buy time. His team ran. Kevin fought. He killed the first 5 drafts before they even knew what was happening. His gun fired in short, precise bursts, each bullet finding its target. The aliens fell, one after another, their bodies blocking the corridor. But more kept coming. Kevin was hit in the leg, then the shoulder. Pain exploded through his body, but he did not stop. He switched to his backup weapon and kept firing. He moved backward slowly, using the fallen draft as cover, making them pay for every inch of ground dot by the time his team reached the shuttle. Kevin had killed 23 draft soldiers. He was bleeding from 6 different wounds. Any normal person would have been dead, but Kevin Drake was not a normal person. He was a human dot. He reached the shuttle just as the doors were closing. Amy pulled him inside, her face white with shock at the blood covering his body. "Get us out of here," Kevin gasped. "The charges go off in 2 minutes." The shuttle flew away from the flagship at maximum speed. Behind them, the explosions began. The reactor core went critical, ripping the massive ship apart from the inside. Fleet Commander Harville died in his chair, never understanding how a handful of humans had destroyed his flagship, thought the loss of their commander broke the draft reinforcement fleet. Ships began to retreat, jumping away to safety. The humans pursued them, destroying as many as they could before they escaped. When the Battle of Seoul ended, the draft had lost over 90 ships. Their greatest fleet had been broken by a species they had considered primitive. Their best commanders were dead or captured. Their technology had been stolen and improved by their enemies, and the humans were not. Finished. Admiral Marcus Cole stood in the command center, looking at the reports coming in from across the solar system. The immediate threat was over. Earth was safe. But he knew this was not the end. "Sir, the draft survivors are retreating to their home systems," his aide reported. "Should we let them go?" Marcus thought about Nathan Ellis, the cargo hauler who had died ramming his ship into an enemy flagship. He thought about all the other volunteers who had sacrificed themselves to protect their families. He thought about what the draft had planned to do to human children. "No," Marcus said quietly. "We're going to follow them. We're going to find their homeworld. And we're going to make sure they can never threaten anyone again." His aide looked nervous. "Sir, that's not defense anymore. That's invasion. That's conquest." Marcus turned to face him, and his eyes were hard as stone. "No, that's survival. Because if we let them rebuild, they'll come back. They'll come back with more ships and bigger weapons, and next time we might not win. The only way to be safe is to make sure there is no next time." The human fleet began to move, following the fleeing draft across the galaxy. The hunters had become the hunted, and humanity would not stop until the job was done. The war lasted 11 months. 11 months of fire and blood, of battles across 6 star systems, of death on a scale the galaxy had never seen. The humans did not fight like other species. They did not stop when they were tired. They did not give up when things looked bad. They pushed forward, always forward, until their enemies had nowhere left to run. Danny Cooper, the young lieutenant who had first spotted the draft fleet, was now a captain. He commanded his own ship, a fast cruiser named the Steadfast. He had changed during the war. The friendly farm boy from Kansas was gone. In his place was a hardened warrior who had seen too much death. Katie Morgan fought beside him, now promoted to lieutenant commander. They had become close during the long months of combat, supporting each other through the nightmares and the loss of friends. Together, they led their ship through dozens of battles. The final battle took place above the Drath homeworld. The human fleet had grown during the war, swelled by captured ships and new designs built in orbital factories. Over 200 vessels faced the last defenders of the Drath collective. The Drath begged for mercy. They offered surrender. They promised to become peaceful, to never threaten anyone again. Their leaders stood before the communication screens and pleaded for their lives. Admiral Marcus Cole listened to their pleas. Then he responded. "I might have accepted your surrender at the beginning," Marcus said. "When you first arrived in our system, if you had simply left when I told you to, we could have avoided all of this. But you didn't leave. You threatened our children. You planned to enslave our species. You killed good people who were only trying to protect their families." He paused, his old face showing the weight of everything he had seen. "Now, I have a choice. I can accept your surrender and let you rebuild. In 50 years, maybe 100, you might be strong again. You might look at Earth and think about revenge. My grandchildren, or their children, might have to fight this war all over again." The draft leaders waited in terrified silence. "Or I can end this now. I can make sure you never threaten anyone again. Not just humans, but any peaceful species that might catch your attention." Marcus looked at the planet below. Billions of Drath lived there, most of them innocent, most of them just ordinary people who had nothing to do with the invasion of Earth. "I'm not going to destroy your planet," Marcus finally said. "I'm not going to kill your civilians. That's not who we are. But your military, your weapons, your ability to make war, those I will destroy. Every ship, every factory, every training facility. And then you're going to sign a treaty. You're going to agree to be peaceful forever. And if you ever break that treaty, even once, I'll come back. Do you understand?" The draft leaders understood. They had no choice but to accept. The destruction took 3 weeks. Human forces systematically eliminated every draft military asset. Weapons platforms, shipyards, research facilities, everything that could be used for war. The Drath watched in despair as their power was taken away, but Marcus kept his word. Not a single civilian was harmed. When Drath cities ran out of food because supply lines were disrupted, human ships brought supplies. When Drath hospitals lost power because the energy grid was damaged, human engineers helped repair it. The galaxy watched in confusion. The humans had won completely. They could have taken anything they wanted. They could have enslaved the Drath, taken their resources, claimed their worlds. That was what victors did. Instead, the humans helped their defeated enemies rebuild. This was the part that no other species understood. Humans could be incredibly violent, yes. They could wage war with a ferocity that shocked the galaxy. But once the war was over, once the threat was eliminated, they stopped. They did not enjoy conquest. They did not want to rule over others. They just wanted to be left alone, and they felt responsible for those they had defeated. 5 years after the war ended, the Drath had become a protected species of the new human commonwealth. Human teachers helped educate Drath children. Human doctors helped treat Drath sick. Human engineers helped rebuild Drath infrastructure. Commander Zethral, the Drath officer who had led the original invasion, was released from a human prison camp. He returned to his homeworld expecting to find ruins and suffering. Instead, he found schools where Drath children learned beside human children. He found hospitals staffed by human doctors who treated Drath patients with kindness. He found his people rebuilding, slowly but surely, under the protection of their former enemies. It made no sense to him. Why? Zethral asked a human aid worker he met on the street. Why do you help us? We tried to destroy you. We wanted to enslave your children. You should hate us. The aid worker, a young woman named Lisa from a small town in Colorado, smiled at him gently. We did hate you, she admitted. During the war, I hated the Drath more than I had ever hated anything. But the war is over now. Hate isn't useful anymore. What's useful is making sure this never happens again. And the best way to do that isn't punishment. It's friendship. Zethral did not understand, but he nodded slowly. Maybe, in time, he would learn. Back in the present day, in the Great Hall of the Galactic Council, High Arbiter Vexenal finished his presentation. He showed the final image. Danny Cooper, now an admiral, shaking hands with Zethral, his grandson, at a joint academy where humans and Drath train together. This is why Directive 774 exists, Vexenal said. Not because humans are monsters. They are not. They can be kind, generous, forgiving. They will give you the shirt off their back if you need it. He looked around at the assembled ambassadors. But they are also protective. Fiercely, terribly protective of their own. Threaten a human colony, and they will ask you to leave peacefully. Threaten human children, and they will pursue you across the galaxy. They will tear apart your fleet, destroy your military, and eliminate your ability to ever threaten them again. Ambassador Krixtel of the Varathi Empire stood up slowly. His earlier arrogance was completely gone. High Arbiter, he said respectfully, I move that the Varathi Empire formally requests a diplomatic relationship with humanity. We would like them to be our allies, not our enemies. That is wise, Vexenal replied with the smallest hint of a smile. Very wise indeed. The motion passed without a single vote against it. As the ambassadors filed out of the Great Hall, many of them looked up at the stars with new eyes. Somewhere out there, on a small blue planet at the edge of the galaxy, lived a species that had conquered a death world and survived. A species that could wage war like no other, but chose to live in peace. A species that asked for nothing but safety for their children. The humans were not looking for trouble. They were happy to trade, to explore, to make friends with other species. They were warm and welcoming to those who came in peace. But across the galaxy, every civilization received the same message. Attached to Directive 7-4. Do not involve humans in your conflicts. Do not threaten their worlds. Do not touch their children, because if you do, they will not stop until you can never threaten them again. And then, if you're lucky, they'll help you rebuild. That was the nature of humans. That was who they were. Violence and compassion, fury and forgiveness, wrapped together in a species that defied all logic. The galaxy had been warned.